If alcohol marker coloring feels harder than it should, I'm going to show you the simplest way I approach adding shading and dimension without overthinking it. Then you'll see how this simple coloring process turns into a polished A2 card with only a few finishing touches. So let's get into it. I'm using Altenews Rock Garden alcohol markers with the Botanical Elegance coloring sheets. Altenews sent me these things for free so that I can share them with you. And I'll show you how I use these exact colors to place the shadowing and build dimension as I go. Everything I'm using in this video is going to be linked in the description below. So we're diving right in, and I'm using colors Cosmic Berry, Purple Wine, Puffy Hearts, and Rose Quartz for the flowers. And I'm just laying down ink, not being too careful as far as blotchy or worrying about blending or anything like that, because that's not necessary right now. And then I'm going to come in with the second color, which is the Purple Wine, and I'm using that to create that dimension by flicking up. It's a darker color, just laying it on the bottom of the flowers and the base of the flower, and just flicking up, giving that flicking motion, kind of a wispy motion to create that dimension on that flower. And then I'm going to come back in with the lightest color, and I'm going to lighten that up here in just a little bit. But I'm going to finish putting that down all over. And right now I'm just looking. So one of the things I don't worry about shadows. That's just not my thing. I'm not an artist. I'm not a professional, but I love doing this. And I think I can make things look pretty good. So I'm just coming in with that darker color and just putting shadows down where I think they look best. Now, do I know if the sun is going to be casting shadows in those specific areas? I don't know. It's just what I decided. And I don't know if a professional artist came in and looked at this, they might be shaking their head. But for me, this works just fine. And now I'm coming in with that lighter color, and I'm going to blend those two colors together. So I'm using the Cosmic Berry, then laying down some Purple Wine at the base, and then coming back in with Cosmic Berry, and I'm just lightening that up and taking it up a little bit further. Now, why do I do that? Because this is what causes the blending with the alcohol. Alcohol creates... It activates again when it's hit with more alcohol. So when I bring those colors in, I'm able to move that color and kind of blend it together. Now I'm taking the lightest color and I'm putting it over the stems. And I personally always start with the lightest color because you can always add more light, right? You can always add more and get darker, but you can't go lighter if you lay down the darker first. And I know that seems obvious, but when we're doing this in the moment, we don't think about those things. We may look at these stems and think, oh, I want these to be the darkest color, and I do, but that's just not what I'm not going for that first. So now I'm going to come in and do the same thing with the leaves, and I'm going to lay down that lightest color. So it's going to look kind of flat when I first start putting this all down, because you're going to notice that they're all the same color. And that's the way I want them to look, because then I can add the dimension later. So now what I did notice, where I pointed just there, I noticed that there was a stem there. So that means there must have been a flower there. Some of these on these coloring sheets are really hard to tell, like what's what, at least while you're doing it. It's hard to tell like what part's a flower, what's supposed to be white space, and what's supposed to be a leaf. And so as you color out what's obvious, the other things will start showing up. And at this point, I wasn't sure if that was part of the flower or if that was supposed to be white space and the other side was supposed to be part of the flower, but I just guessed, and I guessed well. Now, on these markers, you have a brush tip and then you have a fine tip. And for this, I just want to use the brush tip. What I love about these markers, though, is that they don't have a chisel tip. I like the brush because for bigger areas like this, I can do flicking motions and I can do all the, large areas to brush in. But the fine tip helps me to get in those tighter spaces. I like that much better than the chisel tip because I never, ever, ever use the chisel tip. So now I'm going to come in with that lighter color again, and I'm going to go ahead and go over that and blend it together with the lighter color. And you'll see how it all blends together. And then you just have this like beautiful, wispy, almost like natural look to the flower. Now I'm coming in with that lightest green again, and I am going to go ahead and lay color on those leaves. Now this takes a little bit, so I'm probably going to skip ahead so you don't have to watch this whole thing, but I did speed up the camera quite a bit, and I don't want to miss you being able to see anything that's going on. Now, like I said, I'm being very careful not to go outside those lines. And I do go outside a little bit, but then I cover it up with some darker color later. So it's okay. And a lot of these areas that you think are white space are not. They're part of the leaf. So it does make it a lot easier to fix a mistake when you make one. But I'm also not worrying about if it's blotchy or anything like that because I am going to blend this out later with darker colors. Right now, I just want to lay color down. I just want the ink to get on the leaves, and then that way I can go in and do my thing to make it have that more dimension and depth. And it's funny because when my husband looked at this card, it was just really cute because he looked at it and he said, wow. He said, that really looks like it's coming out at you. So the end result is beautiful when you do it this way. And like I said, I'm not a colorist. I'm not a professional artist. I just feel for what it is that I like, and it works for me. And you can see how I got outside the lines a little bit with that purple, and I just colored it up with the green, and it colored right up. It just blended right in. I've only been coloring with alcohol markers for about a little over a year probably. So I'm by no means, like I said, I am not a professional. This is just what works for me. It's what I like, and I enjoy doing it very much. And since finding alcohol markers that feel really good in your hands and just make the process a lot easier, it's nice to have something like that. Copics always scared me. Those were markers that I did not really like to play with, and I didn't acclimate well to them. As we wrap up coloring the leaves, I'm looking at the stems and I'm thinking, I think I want those to be a little bit darker. So at this point, I'm going to grab the second darkest color. So for the leaves, I'm using Emerald, Lagoon, Volcano Lake, and Mountain Mist. So I went in, this is all emerald. I just colored all the leaves, and I just noticed that last leaf there, that's an actual leaf, not white space. and that may happen, and that's okay, because I did end up getting them all. But anyway, I just laid that emerald all down, and then I decided to come back in with my darkest and even darker color, which is Puffy Hearts. And I think this is rose quartz. And I wanted to lay an even darker color down, because as it dried, it lightened up quite a bit, and I thought, I just really want more dimension on there. So I went ahead and went in with the rose quartz, which is the darkest color, and started scribbling on some color and flicking, but just at the very base. I didn't want to go all, I just went I didn't even go halfway up until I came back in with purple wine, and then I started brushing up, and then I come back in again with the lightest color. So the best thing I can tell you, or the best advice I can give you, is to have patience with this, that the slower you go and more methodical, would that be the word, the better your results are going to be. You just don't want to rush the process. You just want to take your time, get that color on there, and then just start going back and forth with your colors from lightest to darkest, from lightest to medium to darkest, from lightest to medium to darkest. You might go back in with some more medium and back in with some more light. And I'm not going all the way. You'll notice that I'm not going all the way to the tops of the flowers. I'm leaving that quite a bit light, very light, because that, in my mind, when I look at a flower, that's how I think it looks realistically. And I was really going for a realistic look with this project. However, I do know that the leaves are not going to be an emerald green. But you'll see once I start adding more color to the leaves that those will start looking more realistic as well. And now I'm wrapping up that last flower. I think these are tulips. That's what I would have to say. I'm pretty sure these are tulips. I could be wrong about that. Actually, as I'm looking at the one that's opened up, I probably am wrong about that. I don't know could it be. You tell me in the comments, what kind of flower do you think this is? Because I really don't know. And I was a landscaper for a long time, for like 20 years. Actually, I was a glorified gardener. And I just can't really even think about what these flowers are. Okay, so now you'll see I'm coming in with darker color, and I don't know where the sun's going to hit these. I don't know where to think about where shadows are going to naturally hit. So I just start guessing, and I just start laying down that color. And you'll see that as I do this, now I want more separation between that leaf and that flower. So I came in with a darker color at the top and colored that flower just a little bit darker to create that separation. And this is where I noticed that I wanted the stems darker. So I came in with the second darkest color, which was Lagoon, and I started coloring those in. And it's still not dark enough for me. So after I look at it, I decide, you know what? I want them even darker. So then I go in and I think I want to say I grabbed Mountain Mist. I just grabbed the darkest color because I really wanted the stems to be dark and stand out against those leaves and then really make the flowers pop. So that's what I did. I just came back in. Now I'm adding more of that Mountain Mist. I decided to go in with the darkest color, just add that Mountain Mist and then start blending that in with the lighter color and just going back and forth with that. And you'll see, I just keep coming back to the different leaves on the page and darkening them up and lightening them up and just adding more, color here and there. And then I'll go back to the flowers and when I want to separate them from the leaves, and you'll just see me keep doing this back and forth until I get it the way I want it to look. If you're enjoying this video and the simple card making techniques explained this way, give this video a like and subscribe so that you don't miss another one. Now I'm going back in with that leaf, that flower color, and I just added some more color to that to separate that leaf from the flower. And now I am adding more green, more darker Mountain Mist, and blending that out. And I use a lot of that flicking even when I'm doing that on the leaves, just because I feel like that just is how, when I look at leaves and flowers, and I like that variegated look, and that just reminds me of a variegated look. And I found another stem. So now I'm darkening, two stems, and now I'm darkening those up. And then I'm going back in again and laying down some more darker color on the leaves. And I just keep doing that until I get it to where I like it. And honestly, I probably could have kept going forever until I finally decided I was finished. And I don't think that, I don't even think true artists really ever are finished. You just have to decide when there's a stopping point. At least, I'm not that I'm a true artist, but at least for me, that's what I do. I just decide, okay, this is where I'm stopping and I'm going to call it good. And once I get to that point, then I just stop the project and I move on to the next step. But here, again, I'm adding, this is probably the second lightest color, or maybe that was the lightest color. And I'm just adding more on top of that. The more ink I add, the darker it gets. And then now I've decided that I need to separate those leaves from the flowers right there on that flower. And so I'm adding more color and darkening the tips just in that area. And I just make that really, and as this dries, it really starts looking, it just really starts popping. So here I decided that we need some shine, some shimmer. So I brought in the Distress, what is this? This is Distress Spritz. And I'm just laying some of that down on the table there on my glass mat. I'm putting quite a bit down there. I had to close it up and shake it up because I wanted some more sparkle in there. And that stuff separates. So if you ever get it and you start laying it down, it just looks real clear. Just shake it up a little bit so you can get that sparkle to move. And now I'm just spattering that onto my page. If you enjoy techniques that add a lot of visual detail like this one without making the design complicated, I also have a video showing a gold lace effect with a 3D embossing folder that I think you might like. And I'll link it up here somewhere in the top, and I'll also add it on the end screen. Okay, and there's our artwork. It's finished, but this next part's going to hurt your heart a little bit because it did mine. It was really hard, but we're going to go ahead and cut this down. And I cut it down to, I'm just using matting basic layers. I cut it down to be about an 1/8 inch smaller than a black matting layer that I also cut out that we're going to add it to. And then I cut that to be an 1/8 inch smaller than the white card base that we're going to be using. And we did lose a lot there. It did hurt. I'm not going to lie, it hurt, but we needed to cut this down so we could create a card out of it. And I make A2 size cards. So it is large enough to fit a 5x7. I just didn't want a 5x7, and I would have had to have cut it down a little bit, but I just make A2 size cards. I really don't make 5x7s, but you can see that I'm adding that black matting layer, and then we have a white card base, and I'm going to add my sentiment right there, just across in that little bit of area there. So I am going to grab my Woven Stripes stamp set. Here I'm stamping a sentiment that I'm using from Altenews Woven Stripes stamp set, and I'm stamping that with VersaFine Clear ink, which is a pigment ink, because I'm going to heat emboss this with some Hero Arts clear embossing powder, and I want to make sure that I'm going to get a good impression. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp this twice because I am stamping this directly onto the cardstock, which means it's going to be a little bit harder to read because it's directly over the flowers with all that alcohol ink, which once I heat emboss it, which is the reason I'm heat embossing it, it's going to show up better, but that second pass is going to help it as well. And here I'm adding the clear embossing powder to the sentiment that I stamped with the pigment ink. And you'll notice that I'm using a cafeteria tray. That's because I used to make a mess everywhere. When I would heat emboss, I would get powder on my stamps, on my desk, on my glass mat. It would just be everywhere. It was an absolute mess. But once I got this tray, it was a game changer. I just keep everything on this tray and I pull out the whole tray. I don't have to look for anything. It's just right here on my tray and it's right next to my desk. It was a true game changer. And now I'm using my heat gun to heat emboss my sentiment. And I just want to let you know, if you're just starting out with your craft space, I have a video on the 10 essential tools that you need to have in your craft space that I believe every craft space needs. It's a checklist, it's a video, and then I also have a checklist for you that you can grab. I'll leave those links in the description for you as well. So now here I am adding foam tape to add dimension to my card. This is Altenews foam tape. It is very sticky, so that's why I land it on its side when I'm cutting it, so that way I don't get it stuck where I don't want it stuck before I'm ready to. And now I'm going to add that to my black matting layer that I cut down. And then we're going to take that and we're going to add that to our card base. And I'm using Barely Arts Precision Glue to glue this down to my white card base, making sure that it's on the right side. You always want to check before you glue that you have the right side, because I have made that mistake so many times gluing this upside down that I just check every time now just so I can make sure I don't make that mistake again. And now as the final finishing touch, I'm adding the enamel dots, clear enamel dots from Altenews to add that extra dimension and just give it that extra pop. And that's our finished card. What do you think? Botanical Elegance coloring sheet carries almost the entire design. And that black matte, sentiment, spatter, and foam tape and the enamel dots are just finishing touches that bring it all together. Next, watch my video on my gold lace 3D embossing folder technique if you want another way to create a detailed, polished card without building a complicated layout. And hey, if you're still watching, I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today. And if you enjoyed this video and found value in it, give it a like so that YouTube will tell other card makers about it. Subscribe so you never miss a video, and hit the bell so that you get notified every time we put one out. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.